that regarding to attention plus information treatment or for instance regarding attention or primary effects from the totally belief updating, right? So it's a key challenge we want to mitigate concerns. So here the suggestion is that the common method to mitigate concern about primary or attention about topic include one with eliciting the prior belief based on the input treatment and the control group. Yeah, so we asked about prior belief both for the control and the treatment group. This one is also one of strategy to reduce the primary effect because we already asked about expectation. So at this point in time when we ask questions about information expectation, so people already start thinking about different dimensions related to how they form information, right? They already think about their grocery spending, gasoline price, or price of usable things, and also the news. All the news they have so far to get an idea about what is the inflation over the next 12 months, right? So we already tell them about that. It's not only about when we provide the information here. So for example, without prior belief. So for example, now if we don't ask questions about the prior belief here, about inflation, and then we just have control group and the treatment group. So the treatment group here, when we provide the information about inflation, so at this point, people can start thinking about this topic compared to control group without any prior belief here, right? So in this case, the information treatment here also has some potential side effect from the primary or attention to the topic. It's just more of the important way provide and people start thinking about things as well. So if we answer prior belief, it also helps us to mitigate the concern about primary or attention regarding the topic we conduct the survey. Yeah. And the second strategy is that we can separate the information provision from the main outcomes with a follow-up study. So with a follow-up study, it means that in this step, we separate our survey in two steps. So in the first way and in the second way, and the second way here can conduct after 1 week or 3 weeks or 1 month later. But as I said, this strategy it seems to be good, but it also very costly to do so. So normally in macroeconomics, we don't do that because it's costly, and we in the literature they find that the primary effect from the in macro is quite small because we ask about the general macroeconomic condition rather than we ask about personal situation. So that's why the primary effect on macro outcome is less severe compared with the microeconomic study. The slides here and the textbook here is applied and for both. This is applied for both micro and macro study. For macro study, we will have this problem too much, and they find that in macro study is by if you ask for the general and for the agri and economic. So we can skip this one, but this one is if the funding is large and available, we can think about that. We can separate our survey in different steps. Okay, maybe 1 day later or 2 days later, that also powerful as well. That we can handle a lot of concern because the thing is that when you submit our paper to the journals, the referee can come from many different disciplines. They can could be a macroeconomist, but also microeconomist as well. And in this way, microeconomists they referee our paper. They can maybe very hard comment for and it's challenging. But in general, macro there is a find okay we give this strategy without any follow-up study or separate the survey in 2 steps. But it becomes more important in micro study. So if you study in different field, so you might need to consult with the expert in industry to show that whether it's important to separate the survey in two steps or not, because the primary and or the integrity will be important. And the last strategy here is that we can include an active control group. That is the control group here. The active we talked so far, we talk about the control group without any further information. So we put that in the pure control group without any further information. But another way that you also have a control group, so in this slide they call that is active control group. It's a control group still with some information, but it's unrelated to the topic of inflation. We call that is a classical philosophy. Treatment like in the medicine, because we did some like medicine, but there are no medical effect. But just to feel like that we have some. But this we call that active control group. For example, in macro, some research they also try to use active control group, like for example, they solely they give the control group here with information about the population growth over the last 3 months or last 3 years in the US, also at 2%, for example, because they want to show that is because of the inflation rate of the central bank also at 2%, and they also provide another number also 2%, but it's the population growth rate in the US over the last 3 years also at 2%. Just to see that just 2% of the population growth also have important effect, and 2% inflation target for the central bank. It's very cool that it's active control group. But just to see whether the people just take the number we provide, or is it because of the information we provide regarding to the relative, how much is relative to the outcome variable. So that's why we have active control group, but again, in the literature, especially in monetary macroeconomics, we find that the active control group is not so important. And but in microeconomics, the active control group in some area is become very important. So again, you have to consult with professors in that field if you want to conduct, for example, in labor study or in education study. For example, my active control group might be important, but in monetary macro, they also try the difference between the pure control group and the active control group. It's almost no different effect. So it should be fine without the active control group. And they suggest for the active control group, because we don't have the pure control group, and here we can effectively see the effect of the information treatment with the group without any information. And one more thing is that one of the advantages of the active control group here is that because when we provide some information here, the people take some time to read it, right? Maybe 1 minute or 10 seconds, or and the time they spend to read the information here also require some efforts and makes people tired. So if we also have some information on the control group here, to make the control group here also a little bit tired. So we ask them to read something with similar with the information treatment here. So that actually I make everyone in the same level of physical and mentality condition. That would be enough reason why we use active control group. But the thing is that the information we provide here is typically very short. In monthly macro, for example, we just tell people they can't be measured 3%, just 1 sentence, and in 5 seconds, we can finish reading, so there's no impact on physical point, so then there will probably be back into the concern about active control group. But in some micro studies, the treatments here could take some time or long, maybe 1 hour, for example, or 30 minutes, or 20 minutes, or maybe 15 minutes just to go into a lecture, for example, or some information or some introduction about the topic, and maybe it takes 5 minutes or 10 minutes. So in this case, we might need some active control also can do something in the same time. The treatment group, they have to do something. Reading something for 5 minutes before they can continue the survey to make everyone the same level of mentality, right? Because the aim here is that we want to use all the control group and the treatment group here in the same condition about not only about demographic like age income and depression, but also how tired they are or how happy they are after the treatment, right? So that is why we need the active control. But again, in monitoring macroeconomics, we can quite sure can be quite sure that it's not an issue. Yeah, here they also have some discussion about active advantages of that, of both active and field control group. The macro we can basically. Yeah. And the next thing is that about cross learning. For example, if we provide information here about the central bank 2%, for example, so the people can think about as topic. For example, if they know that the central bank at 2%, they also can link it with the economic growth expectation, or they can think about business cycles, for example, or if we talk about the current inflation rate at 3%, so that they can link with interest rate levels in the future, for example. So the outcome variable we measure here about spending, for example. The treatment effect here is not only effect on inflation expectation, but also other variable like economic growth expectation or income expectation or interest rate expectation, but also has impact on the actual spending, right? So in this case, the might problem of the ID or the instrument variables here is not valid because it's not wholly because the treatment here has impact on interest expectation, but also impact on other factors also have impact on the outcome variable. So how to deal with that? So after the treatment here, maybe we also need to ask everyone again about economic growth expectation, income expectation, and other expectation, so that we can use this variable as a control when we estimate the final outcome and the consumption. So to make sure that the treatment here, we already, the impact of the treatment on the inflation expectation here already taking into account the other expectation. Okay? Yeah, that is how we deal with the cross learning. And we got into the mitigating, the anchoring, and delaying effect. We discussed a few tricks in here already, but how to mitigate the anchoring and delaying effect. Yes, so mitigate anchoring and delaying effects here the best practice. That the first one here we measuring of quantitative unit on a scale that differs from the scale on which the information is communicated, right? So, as I said, so in this day we provide some number at target at 2%, so that's why we add density forecast but we use a different scale, right? It's not about the point forecast. So this is why we often prefer to use the MCP forecast after the treatment. But in some research, they also use point forecast after the treatment. But in this case, maybe have some anchoring effect on the information we provide on the outcome variables. And one should also employ quantitative measure of need that we discussed here. We also can use some qualitative expectation after the treatment in the abstract. So that, because here we talk about some numbers, right? Information with numerical information, and then we have post-probability using the qualitative measure of belief. Or we can use a follow-up survey here that we separate the main survey here in two steps, in two survey. Because they said that the nuclear anchoring is a solid phenomenon. So that we can solve the problem of the anchoring. But I said, first thing we have to do is close of the survey. If we most couple, if we separate our survey in two steps, the closely and if very closely, and the second thing is that it also reduce the impact of the treatment effect on the outcome variable because after what we forget not only about the number but also the whole message of the information we provide. And considering that even that the information here is very short, that's about 5 seconds or 1 minute to finish the whole thing. Yeah. And another strategy is that we can obfuscation experiment, meaning that we hide the purpose of the study so that people cannot guess what they are able to do.
So as the way of mitigate the demand.
Yeah. But in this case, we it doesn't mean that we hide everything, but we do not tell too much about the purpose of the study. For example, it's okay to say that at the very beginning, the introduction of the survey, we say that the aim of this study is to understand how people to know the opinions and the views of people about the macroeconomic conditions, for example. So that's it. But we don't want to say that we want to study the impact of inflation on spending, for example. So it's too much, right? So if we talk very detailed about the purpose of the study, so that the people can guess about and try to perform our purpose, right? So we still talk about the purpose, but just very, very briefly, not about our resource question, right? There are some people, I know that in some online survey or in some online survey, they also say that in this purpose, this study, we want to study the impact of tax on spending, for example, the impact of tax policies on blah blah. So it's already we tell about the purpose, and the people try to answer in a way that we are happy. So don't tell detail about the purpose. We tell something to motivate people to participate in our survey, but not too much. So that is the idea. Yeah. And we also can often test the follow-up survey, for example, in the first survey here, and now we separate the survey here in two steps, right? But in the second survey here, we can use different format layout of the question, for example, or in the first survey here, we set up this survey here conducted by Vietnamese University, and in the second follow-up survey we set up is conducted by the Ho Chi Minh Economic University, for example. So it's a different research, but I think it's quite risky strategy, and in some survey companies they don't accept it because that in this survey we will interview you again in the future. Otherwise, the survey company will not conduct the survey for us. So in theory, it's a good idea, but in practice, I find that it's a challenging and sometimes it's impossible to do so. Yeah. And we also can do some kind of story regarding the important treatment, so that the kind of purpose of the treatment here. But yeah, maybe it's important in some area of economics, but in macro, I didn't find any kind of story for the important treatment. Yeah. Yeah, I already discussed this one. Yes, and one last strategy. I haven't tried this, but in the literature, there's some research. They also suggest some question, some approach to mitigate the demand effect from experimenter by asking what do you think about the same time that the experimenter expected you to choose some options, or the researcher can use some open-ended questions to make about the purpose of the study. So when you think about what is the purpose of this study, for example, to see whether people they know that they are in experiment or not, so they try to do that. But I haven't tried any of this approach so far, but maybe in the future I will try and I will tell you the real impact of this strategy. But here is some suggestions from the literature so that we can consider when we feel that the demand effect is potentially is very large and important and serious in our study. But if we find that this one has no impact from demand effect, we can just ignore it. Okay? So it really depends on project to project to see whether we can apply some strategy and deal with the demand effect or funding effect. Yeah. Yes, I think that we cover most of it and some practical advice. Let's see. Yeah. Yeah. So first one regarding to the online surveys, because online survey is now become popular and cheap tool to conduct surveys. Cheap tool, it means that now if you want to conduct a survey with 4,000 households, the cost is about 10,000 euros, and 10,000 euros here for one study, it could be cheap. So, but it depends on different scenario and different countries, right? But in advanced economy and for example in Germany to fund for project about 10,000 euros is reasonable and it's not something is actual achieve. So in this case, if that funding is reasonable, but maybe in Vietnam it would be different. Maybe you get 10,000 euros for one study, and for one study is not so easy. Yeah. But the challenge with the online survey here is that the inattention is very high, because people maybe don't answer randomly or not so focused on the survey questionnaire on the answering. So measuring the inattention is key. So we can have some standard screening question. For example, at the beginning of the survey, we also can ask the people that prepare about quality of our survey for our research, and can you commit that we provide the answer with the best of your knowledge and efforts, and answer yes and no. And if you answer yes, then they can continue the survey. So that it's just a reminder with this content that they should try
The best.
some efforts. You cannot say that's the best efforts, but it's some efforts on the survey that is important. And we also can use some open-end questions so that they also actively can participate in the survey and they just click some answer. But once they have to write down something, it also to improve their attention with our survey as well. So open-end question is also a good way to increase attention level. It's like in a class, if there's some discussion between you and me, the attention in the class also higher, something like that. So the work is the same. And also can use some CAPTCHAs in online survey. You know what does it mean about CAPTCHAs?
Show the image of a few distinct characters.
Yeah.
So that only a human can recognize it.
Yeah.
I think we do many types of CAPTCHAs now, and I realize sometimes like it's trying to distinguish between robots and humans, by the way, robots do it so perfectly and so fast.
Yeah.
So humans do it more like struggle a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. That is a technique that how to deal with the robot answer. So, and also the fundamental concern is online survey that they can use some AI tools like ChatGPT, for example, to provide the answer for me. But if we improve one question, we think that is select some picture that with traffic lights or something like that. Robot cannot do. And it's make sure that people still pay attention to our survey. But the thing is that we don't over increase. So maybe one question or two questions is okay, but 3 or 4 then it makes people
Tired.
unlike, yeah, because actually the main responsibility is human. So we just want to make sure that actually when we want to convince our people about the quality of the survey, we also include some 1 or 2 CAPTCHA questions to make sure that I haven't tried it yet, but it's a suggestion from the survey company. And if we work with a good survey company, here I think CAPTCHAs here is more important if we conduct the survey by ourselves. For example, when we define the questionnaire and then we put it online and in some platform and then we ask people to answer it. So the CAPTCHAs here is important. But if we work with a survey company, they provide services for online survey and to collect data for us, and we pay the fee of 10,000 euro for one survey, for example. So they already have some techniques we did into make sure to ensure the quality of the survey and to ensure that the human answer is not about using some AI technique. And they also have some certificate to make sure that they're able to do so. Yeah, so yeah, this thing is where we conduct the survey by ourselves and we put it in some Google online survey, for example. Yeah. Okay. And yeah, the last one I think that also important for the survey, and that is where the survey how we can collect the sample, right? The sample here would be based on the probability-based samples or online panel that we take in terms of some observables like risk income education. So in online survey we conducted here, it may be on the second page in the same category here is online panel quantitative in terms of some demographic variable like age, income, education, or location. Yeah. But the probability-based samples here, in that everyone has some time to participate in the survey. And this sample is collected from the whole population. And in this case, we have a more representative sample of the population, but in general, it's a very expensive and field experiment rather than the online experiment. And it's also costly, and the respondent rate also quite low. So when we ask for the whole population, for example, the respondent rate is about 5% or 10% they answer our survey. So in this way, the sample, the respondent rate is low and the cost is high, but it's a more representative in terms of the population compared with the online panel, because in the online panel here, even that we work with some survey company, they can collect the sample for us with some demographic characteristic like its income allocation is similar to the population, but actually those who participate in the panel of the online survey company is someone already have some motivation to participate to the online, right? For example, they like to answer the online survey question. They want to make some money from that, so they have some interest in answering the question. Yeah. So it's, and that group of people still they're somewhat different from the true population, right? But of course, it still has some trade-off. It's still acceptable in the academic research when we going to studies the whole population. Yeah, because of if the samples is large enough, like 1,000 or 10,000, even some study they can do online survey with 100,000 observation at one time. So in this case, if the sample is large enough, it's okay. Yeah, and here they already discussed the advantage and disadvantage of different way, but just keep in mind that everything now, I think is the best practice at the moment for us is with online survey. But when the funding is available and we have time to do so, we can go with a field experiment as well. And one more advantage of the online panel surveys is that we can measure how much time they spend on our survey exactly, because every in-person survey in the field experiment. Because, for example, in the information treatment here, for each question, I can measure how much time they spend on each question using the constant in our online survey. So to measure whether people actually read the information we provide or not, or they just ignore it, right? Because when we provide the information here, we know that in normal people, they need about 30 seconds to finish reading. But some responded in teaching group, they just spend about 3 seconds or we move to the next question. In this day, 3 seconds is not enough to read anything. And in this day, if the 3 seconds and we have to exclude these people, or we can consider that it's like a control group without any information to right? Yeah, because here we have to test for the role of compliance or non-compliance with the survey experiment, or where they actually follow and read the information we provide. And for this, the online survey, we have some advantage of measuring exactly how much time they spend on picking the information we provide. Right? Yeah. So here is some last question about how before we conduct the survey for how to fund the surveys. It's how does your survey experiment inform the technical models? For example, we measure the impact of inflation expectation here, for example, on consumption. Here we want to test the Euler equation or the AS curve in the technical model, right? So we want to test whether the Euler equation or the AS curve in the new integral is contribute to the theoretical models, right? Or if we want to estimate some parameter like the interchannel substitution elasticity in the theoretical model, for example, we also can do some experimental to estimate it. So we have to ask ourselves where the contribution of our experiment here is to contribute to the theoretical models or not. That's the first thing. And the second thing, here we can think about whether our experiment inform the policy debate or some policy discussion, for example, the role of frank communication on the anchoring of inflation expectation, or what is the best communication strategy from central bank to communicate with the inflation or with the firms or with the professional forecaster, for example. So whether we contribute to theoretical models or we contribute to the policy debate or policy implication, right? And that's two things for the purpose of the study. And the best here that if we can, in one project, we can contribute to both the theoretical models and policy implication. That is the best
climate
idea.
change เนอะ
But
climate change
in general, it's hard to do so. But the thing is that if we contribute to the new Keynesian models, for example, we already contribute to monetary policy implication because the new Keynesian model is a for monetary policy implication, right? So in this way, we can contribute both to the theoretical models and policy debate. And the next question is that how natural is your outcome measure? It is similar to the decision people take in the real world, and this decision important or not. Yeah, for example, we have to ask whether the decision on consumption spending is important for the household or not, or it's just a small thing. Or yeah. Or the question on the impact of inflation expectation on the decision like to buy a house, to buy a car, or to take the mortgage or not. So to see whether the important how important it is for the outcome variable we want to measure or we want to study. That is important factor. It's important for opinion or not. And the way we measure the variables here is something is natural or not. For example, in the pedagogy, we know that the way that the central bank is self-interpreted is a function of inflation expectation and the output gap, right? But if we ask people about what do you think about the output gap in the next one, no one can answer that, right? Because it's not information. But we have to find some variable that is both similar to output gap. Here it would be the economic growth or unemployment expectation, for example. So it's not consistent 100% with the outcome variable to the variable in the theoretical models, but it's closely it's similar to the model, and that's okay. Yeah. And again, the last one is that when the student effects here, it's important for the models or the topic debate. Yeah. Yeah. And the last point is that is how to make it excellent paper or project. The most powerful experiment usually have a sub implication for different theories of economic behavior or theories of expectation formation. If we can contribute to theory or the theoretical models of like the Keynesian models or the theory about how people form expectation is great. And if we read our paper can test some key behavior assumption of class of models, so whether we additional inattention to models, for example. Or we can calibrate the models using experimental estimated expectation assessment. For example, we can provide some hypothesis, some hypothetical scenario, for example, based what if the central bank they raise interest rates or they keep interest rates unchanged over the next 3 years for the forward guidance policy, for example, what would you expect about the change in spending or investment or saving over the next 3 years? So that we can play around and to calibrate, can estimate some parameter about the input response function in the theoretical model to see whether our individual study results is consistent with some input response function in the theoretical model about the forward guided policy. That is the key point and how to make powerful paper with survey experiment and how to connect the papers and the experiment with the theoretical aspect or with the policy implication. We can do one or two here is already great. Contribute to the academic like theoretical model, or you contribute to the policy debate.
Expectation.
Yeah. For fiscal policy or budget policy is also important. Okay. Yeah. Great. Any question? Yes. So now I will go to some so understand. Yeah. I already uploaded the whole file in Moodle. This is for
Attendance.
but I'm not sure if now still valid, but I can tell Funai that you already come to class before 9:15.
But I want to.
If it doesn't work, I will tell Funai later. Yeah, so in our latest slide folders here, I just upload how to run a survey experiment with examples. And in this folder, I share with you. With two folders here. And in this folder, you will see two things.
Relocation. Slides.
Yeah, I shared 3 folders. One is a slide I will present now, and the manuscript is so manuscript here with the papers and with the appendix. Yeah. So with the paper and with the appendix, but also with the latex type, so that we can learn how to use latex to write a paper. Okay. Yeah, actually it's an original type from my application, so only you can do it. And here I also have a replication file of papers here with the full file to link data, and also with the full file to achieve those results in the paper. With the data file here as well, and with the question and printing some guidelines to how to work with the data. Yep. And in the slide here, I also have two slides. One slide here and also with the LaTeX file for you, so that you also can learn LaTeX to produce a presentation like this one. Okay, so I think that later if you use LaTeX for your work like thesis or presentation, it could be very but it's a good way to learn this by example, so I think it's better than. And then you can add ChatGPT or Google how to do this and what I'm thinking for step by step. You can learn it very fast. Actually, it's quite easy. Yeah, so I will use an analysis paper for you as examples how to conduct a survey experiment from the scratch. Okay, and and we will go through how we can do that. So here is title of the papers, and the papers here last year it got accepted as a review of economics and statistics. So it's not top 5 paper in the economics, but it's in top 6. So first below top 5. So in the top 5, that is so it's that is being any economist in the world, even in Harvard or in MIT. But this paper is also very close to top 5. The top 6 is still very good. Actually, it's excellent publication so far. And yeah, I will show you how to do the survey experiment here to answer this question about inflation literacy, inflation expectation, and triple percentage rate. And the idea of this paper. And we can run the survey study. And the aim of our paper here is what is the cause effect of inflation literacy on the formation of inflation expectations and truth in the same place. So when I said so, I will present this paper in the same template, but I ask you to present a paper, right? Start with a resource question, and then why it's important, why we have to study it, and then what is the contribution of the paper to the literature, and then we present data and legal strategies and key results, and then some conclusion and discussion. And this is format for job presentation later for your individual project as well. But yeah, we will do some exercise in job presentation on Monday, so we also follow the same strategy. Okay? So here is a question, and in my presentation I prefer to state the question first to make sure that everyone gets what the main message of the aim of the paper at the very beginning of the presentation. So the aim of this paper is to understand the cause and effect of inflation literacy on the formation of inflation expectation and triple percentage rate. And it ends with a question mark. So it's a clear resource question. So in short presentation, in the first slide or the second slide, you have to state the resource question and end the question with a question mark. It's not a full sentence, but it's a sentence with a question mark to make sure that it's a question, because we try to answer the question. Sometimes it's hard to present or to state the question because we don't know exactly what we are doing. So it is also possible as well when we work with product and to get the full sentences. The question is it takes some time and even some years to get a very clear and precise resource question. Okay, and the motivation of this project that is to understand the mode of inflation high and hampering inflation expectation in the population and reinsured to the central bank. But the problem is that many consumers struggle with concepts like inflation and do not fully understand how monetary policy functions, right? They don't know what inflation is, how monetary policy works, and so how can monetary policy and inflation can influence their belief about future inflation, right? Yeah. So that's why we need to understand the role of inflation literacy on the formation of expectation. So now I go to the research question in detail. So the first one here is a big picture, the big question to get your attention to the topic, and then we talk a little bit about motivation, why it's important, and then we back again to the research question. So we emphasize now exactly what we are doing in detail. So two research questions here in detail, then providing a simple and general information about inflation and monetary policy, literacy on this topic. And the second one is that now does enhancing consumers' inflation literacy affect their inflation forecast? Sure, the central bank as well as a way to integrate quantitative information into the expectation, right? So it's a two questions that we aim to answer in this program. And here we quickly about the strategy of the paper. So very quick primer information about how we can answer this question in very short way. So the first one, we randomly provide the text about the several and non-numerical information about inflation and monetary policy. So we just a literacy treatment because now we're going to quiz someone about a topic about inflation and monetary policies. And then we can study the causal effect of literacy treatment on inflation literacy, inflation prevision, and trade with the central bank. And in the second step, we randomly provide additional quantitative information about inflation and monetary policy. And then we can study the combining effect of the information we provide in the first step with further information about quantitative information on inflation and monetary policy, on the information of inflation expectation and trade with the central bank. So that is two step survey study. And then it's contribution to the literature. What we contribute to the literature, we make three main contributions to the literature. The first one, we contribute to the understanding the effects of economic literacy on the formation of inflation expectation. For example, in our discussion yesterday, we find that those with higher education, they have a lower interest expectation, right? They have a better forecast, they have lower uncertainty, right? But it's not about causal effect, right? It's just correlation. When you take the correlation between education and inflation, we find that higher education or higher financial literacy, they have a lower interest expectation and maybe they have a less forecast error compared with those with low education, right? But here we can study some causal effect of inflation literacy, some knowledge about inflation or the formation of inflation expectation. Right? Yeah. And so second point here, we're going to study the effects of economic literacy on trade in the central bank. In the literature, they also find that those with high education and financial literacy, they also have higher trust in the central bank. But again, it is about the correlation, it's not about the causal effect. So here, we also want to see the impact of some economic literacy on trade in the central bank in the causal effect. And the last point here, we contribute to the effect of monetary policy communication on household inflation expectations. Yeah. So the central bank communication so far in the literature, they study the effect of the information treatment here on the information of inflation expectation. But now we contribute to this process by what are the impact of some basic knowledge about inflation first, and how people can combine basic information about inflation and monetary policy
and treatment.
when they with further information DND Research Institute, so we conduct our survey with a survey company, DND, and in the first way, we able to collect 4,000 German, like this one, we have 4,000 German consumers, and this is a very sample with this state of case, gender, income, and vision in Germany. So it's an online panel, and that is a repetitive regarding to this gender, income, and vision. So the mean of the average is or income and vision is similar to the distribution of the German population. And for example, for genders, we also have 50% is male and 50% is female, for example, and similar for age, income, and vision. In the east and the west of the US also the same distribution in the population of the German households. So that's why we call that it's a representative samples. And this conducted in March 2022. And 3 months later, we 3 months later, we conduct some follow-up surveys. And in the 3 months later survey, we able to collect the follow-up surveys here after 3 months, right? And we were able to collect nearly 3,000 respondents who participated from the first survey. And this is important. And why we do a follow-up survey? Because we want to see where the treatment effect we provide for the first way still exists after 3 months. To see where the consistency of the treatment effect we provide. And for the online survey, if the gap between the first way and the follow-up survey is longer, for example, it's not about 3 months, but now it's become 6 months, for example. So the response rate here will be not about 3,000, but maybe only 2,000 or 1,000. Yeah, because after 6 months, someone already or maybe they exclude from the panel, and the survey company cannot contact with people. So the difference, the re-interview rate will be higher if the gap between the first way and the second way is shorter. And if you conduct 1 month later, you might able to collect about 3,500. But if you collect 3 months later, it's just about 2,800. And 6 months later, maybe you able to collect only about 2,000 or even less, because they might not participate in the panel anymore. Yeah, so the time dimension is important. And actually, if after 3 months, we're still able to collect nearly 70% of the sample is already a very good response rate after 3 months for the online survey. And I think for many survey company at the moment, it's very hard to resolve. They may be able to collect up to 30% or even 10% for the follow-up survey because it's very hard to interview the respondent from the first way, especially for the low quality company. But if we're able to collect 70%, it's already a very good company. So you can see the company that they're able to interview the people from the first way. Yeah, so I think now is in a few minutes, I think in the afternoon I will tell more about the survey and experiment, but a little bit about the story behind this project, so that we know about the story behind why we come up with this project. During my PhD, I have been studying about the impact of inflation expectation on consumption here, but the key contribution of our paper in this project, we find that those with high cancer literacy, the impact of inflation expectation on consumption is more consistent with the oil equation compared with those with low financial literacy. So in this way, we find that the financial literacy is a very important factor to on the link to inflation literacy, some basic knowledge about inflation and monetary policy on the formation of inflation expectation. And first, prior to that, I plan to write an application for funding to conduct a survey in Vietnam. So in this case, in this time, in Hannover University, we have partnered to work with the online survey, but in the rural area in Vietnam, in Đắk Lắk, in Tây Nguyên, Huế, and some rural area in Thailand as well. So they have panel on that areas, and we want to write an application to add our project to that project. But the project, our proposal. So idea is that we will do some field experiment that we can go directly to some rural area and display some workshop about financial literacy and some financial issues, and to see how our teaching and workshop about financial management, for example, can input people about financial issues or financial management, consumption, saving, and so on. So it is in the field experiment, it means that we will teach some financial knowledge to some subgroup of example, right? And then we can measure how to spending and saving to see the cause and effect of the financial knowledge on how the people make economic decisions. But the project is originated from the DFG, so it's the grant by the German government. At the time, we are lucky and because of COVID, so a lot of traveling is disrupted, so we don't go to any functions or our chair. So our professor has some funding left. We shift from benefit that we don't have to go to function, and so we save some money, and we can use that money 10,000 here to conduct our own survey. So in that way, we still have idea of financial literacy on the information of expectation, but still the project is much smaller compared to field experiment. But we still can do some small survey experiment to understand the impact of financial literacy on the information of expectation and churn in central bank. And we use the funding, but to continue with our project that we plan to apply for a field experiment. And that is how it works for this one. And yeah, that's the story behind. And we have 1 hour break, and this afternoon I will tell you about how to apply the knowledge we study everything so far, how to run the survey experiment, and that is the story behind our paper. Okay, so 1 hour break.
Thank you, Professor.